in London. This is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Sally Burdett. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories this hour. Countdown to the ceasefire. Israel's cabinet signs off the agreement with Hamas, just hours before it's due to take effect. Apprehension in Gaza as Israeli strikes continue to kill Palestinians ahead of the truce. Health crisis in South Sudan. Nearly 400 people have died from a cholera outbreak in the past month. A long-awaited ceasefire in Gaza is set to begin within hours after the Israeli government formally approved the deal. 24 cabinet ministers are said to have voted in favour of the agreement and 8 against during a cabinet meeting which ran through the night. The first phase takes effect at 6:30 GMT on Sunday morning. From that time, Israel is expected to cease military operations in Gaza, while Hamas will release an initial group of hostages. Some Palestinian prisoners are also to be freed under the deal. Our correspondent Jonathan Regev is in Tel Aviv.
It's significant, though not in an immediate effect. Why so? Simply because the first phase will eventually go on. It has already been approved, and even the parties that oppose the agreement, such as the Jewish Power, Itamar Ben-Gvir's party, and the religious Zionism headed by Bezalel Smotrich, they said that Ben-Gvir said he will be leaving the government tomorrow morning, and Smotrich said he will stay depending on the fact that the government will resume fighting after the first stage. It means that the first stage in the coming 42 days will go on. Then at that crossroad between the first and the second phase of the ceasefire, Benjamin Netanyahu will have to decide which way he goes. If he goes along with the second stage of the deal, which would include the return of all of the Israeli hostages, but at the same time the withdrawal from the Israeli army from Gaza and an end to the war, both parties, Jewish Power and the religious Zionism, have said they will be leaving the coalition. And even within Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party, there are some hardliners that will perhaps oppose that path. 2 ministers coming from the Likud actually voted against the agreement in government. So that means that when that day comes, 42 days from tomorrow, then Benjamin Netanyahu will have to decide which way to go. Therefore, the fact that there is opposition and quite strong opposition, yes, there's a majority supporting the deal, but a considerable minority opposing it. That minority may have a serious effect on the coalition between the first and the second phase, and that's if the first phase actually goes along with no problems and the 33 hostages will be released. 6 weeks from now, it will be probably the crossroads in which the government will have to decide either to continue with the deal or to risk the end of this coalition.
At the same time, the broader conflict goes on, and we're hearing reports of missiles coming from Yemen.
Yes, 2 missiles are fired today from Yemen. The first one at about 10:30 a.m. local time, a bit under 5 hours ago. Sirens sounding all through central Israel, at the Tel Aviv area, at the Jerusalem area, meaning that millions of people, again, ran to shelters, and debris from some of the missiles was found at the Jerusalem metropolitan area. That was earlier in the day, and just about 30 minutes ago, sirens sounding once again, this time in Israel's southernmost city of Eilat. Sirens sounding following another missile that was fired from Yemen. So we're speaking of 2 missiles today. The Houthis said that if the agreement goes on and the Israeli aggression towards Gaza will end, then they will stop firing. So there might be an end to or at least some kind of a pause of the missiles fired from Yemen as of tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. local time. But at least for now, this is continuing just today. We're speaking of 2 missiles fired from Yemen. There were no damage, there were no injuries, no casualties, but there were millions of people in two different instances, in 2 different areas of the country, running to shelters once again. This front is still very, very much active.
And in developing news, Israeli police say at least one person has been seriously injured in a stabbing attack in Tel Aviv. A passerby reportedly shot the suspect. Police say the attacker was a 19-year-old Palestinian from the occupied West Bank. They're investigating the incident as a potential terror attack. Let's go to Gaza now and speak with our correspondent Rami Al-Magari.
It's a mix of hope and some kind of a fear that the truce will not come into effect. But as stated, yes, repeatedly stated by the officials, that the truce will come into effect by tomorrow morning. This brings some more hope for the population here in the Gaza Strip, especially for those who are eager to return to their places in northern Gaza Strip, Gaza City, or in southern Gaza Strip, City, despite the fact that the Israeli strikes continued overnight, and the latest of which was in Khan Yunis, where a whole family of 5 members were killed during a strike on a tent in the Mawasi area south of Khan Yunis. In general, the mood here is that the people are looking forward to this ceasefire to take into effect and become a reality in their lives for the first time ever in the past 15 months of Israeli war. We talked earlier to some of the people here for CGTN, talked to the people, and some of them, a woman told us that she is ready to return back to her devastated home and set up a new tent. But a new tent for her is different from the tent that she is sitting on in Khan Yunis, south of the Gaza Strip. The preparations are going underway. The Palestinian Authority is said to have been ready to take some responsibility on the Egyptian side of the Egyptian Gaza border crossing, with some of its personnel will be there along with the European Commission to help facilitate the entry of the goods and commodities, which are about 600 truckloads. Preparations are underway. Even here, in terms of the prisoner swap deal, the Hamas's Bureau for Prisoners Affairs stated in a statement that what is being reported on the Israeli media is different from what will be seen on the ground, as the swap deal will take a long time during the early stage of the truce. Also, the Ministry of Interior here, that belongs to Hamas prior to the war, stated in a statement and asked the people, instructed them to abide by public order and to commit to instructions by the ministry's personnel. I mean here the police task force of Hamas. These are in general what's being noticed here in the territory ahead, a few hours ahead of the truce deal to come into effect by Sunday morning.
We also spoke to Rosalia Bolin, a communications specialist with UNICEF.
It's been 15 long months of utter deprivation for families here in Gaza, and they're in need of literally everything, from food to hygiene supplies to proper shelter, clothes, mattresses, blankets. Hospitals lack everything, medicines, medical supplies. So we have been mobilizing items in warehouses outside of Gaza, or in the vicinity of Gaza, at the border with Gaza. UNICEF, for instance, has 1,300 truckloads of goods, of humanitarian items that we could bring in, and we have 700 more that we could line up immediately after that, containing all sorts of items ranging from nutritional supplies, therapeutic food for babies, to, for instance, these hygiene items that I just described.
I want to ask you about the logistics. There are roads that have been bombed. We're hearing of trucks being attacked by criminal gangs. Tell us more about those plans to deal with those challenges.
Yes, well, these challenges are absolutely immense. The ceasefire is going to be a critical first step that will save children's lives, but the actual suffering of children and their families, the utter deprivation, isn't necessarily going to be solved by a ceasefire alone, and that is because of the very, very difficult operating environment here inside Gaza, because of the multiple access constraints and logistical constraints. So you referenced the large scale of destruction in Gaza. Most of the infrastructure is damaged, if not completely destroyed. The roads are a good example, and there's not many paved roads left, and the roads that are still paved have many holes in it. So for trucks, it's hard to maneuver through that. There's lots of congestion as well. We also anticipate population movement, as families in the south are very keen to go back to their homes in the north. We humanitarians, we need warehousing capacity if we're going to increase the volume of supplies bringing in. Those need to be stored, at least temporarily, at warehouses points. We have logistical constraints or security constraints in relation to the lack of law and order, the lack of public order. We need some form of community policing to ensure that no looting takes place. We need demining. There's been a large amount of bombs dropped on Gaza. A percentage of those bombs doesn't explode, and so we fear for an important contamination of unexploded ordnance. So we need demining efforts for us to be able to access certain sites where heavy combat has taken place.
Moving to other news now, Russian drone and missile strikes have killed at least 3 people in Kyiv, according to officials. Ukraine's foreign minister described the pre-dawn attacks as heinous. Russia also targeted the southeastern city of Zaporizhia, where the regional governor said 10 people were injured. At least 16 people have been arrested in Seoul during demonstrations in favor of impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol. Yoon was appearing in court and is accused of insurrection. He became the first South Korean president to be arrested after briefly announcing martial law in early December. Prosecutors want to extend his detention period for 20 days. Yoon has so far refused to speak to them. 2 senior Iranian judges have been shot dead inside the country's Supreme Court in Tehran. The gunman is reported to have then killed himself. Officials say they're trying to establish a motive for what appeared to be targeted assassinations. Iranian state television says the judges were involved in espionage and terrorism cases. The United States says both judges had played a role in prosecuting Iran's political opponents. TikTok says it will, quote, go dark in the United States on Sunday unless President Joe Biden blocks a law banning the app. Comes after the US Supreme Court upheld the ban on Friday. TikTok, which is owned by a Chinese company, ByteDance, has over 170 million users in the US. Donald Trump has indicated that he opposes the ban. TikTok's CEO, Shouzi Chu, released a video message to the incoming US president.
I want to thank President Trump for his commitment to work with us to find a solution that keeps TikTok available in the United States. This is a strong stand for the First Amendment and against arbitrary censorship. Rest assured, we will do everything in our power to ensure our platform thrives as your online home for limitless creativity and discovery, as well as a source of inspiration and joy for years to come.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, the latest on the cholera outbreak in South Sudan as the death toll continues to rise.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with global business, only on CGTN.
I think it should be more global cooperation.
I would like to hear more the voice of the developing countries.
Globalization has lifted more than 1 billion people out of poverty.
The green transition has to happen. It's a necessity.
For China and the United States are important powers in the world.
What unites us
is much more than what divides us. And I believe China is committed to this agenda.
Join me, Juliet Mann, to set the agenda at these times every weekend on CGTN.
You might think you are better informed in an information age. The fact is, people are more often misled by misinformation. You might think every voice is heard in a digital world. The fact is, many nations and peoples are still underrepresented. And data poverty shuts out many. We at CGTN are committed to transcending the information gap and the digital divide. CGTN, bridging nations and civilizations. CGTN, see the difference.
Welcome back. A reminder of our headlines. Israel's cabinet signs off the ceasefire agreement with Hamas just hours before it's due to come into effect on Sunday morning. But there's apprehension in Gaza as Israeli strikes continue to kill Palestinians ahead of the truce. Nearly 400 people have died in South Sudan over the past month as a result of a cholera outbreak. It follows a recent report that found that health emergencies were on the rise in Africa, with cholera now the leading killer. CGTN's Rahul Pathak reports.
One of the worst health emergencies seen in Africa since the COVID pandemic is showing no signs of slowing down. The cholera epidemic in South Sudan continues to spread, with cases now nearing 22,000, with 390 dying as a result of the disease as of the 17th of January this year. The South Sudanese government, which recently received up to 1.1 million doses of cholera vaccines, says it's looking to inoculate up to 300,000 people in the most vulnerable areas.
I urge the media and civil society to join hands in disseminating information and raising awareness about the importance of vaccination.
The outbreak was first declared back in October last year in a local town that borders its northern neighbour Sudan. The spread of the disease, which is caused as a result of contaminated food and water, has been made worse by the influx of more than 120,000 people from Sudan since December due to renewed hostilities in the region. Climate change is also another major factor, with heavy rains, flooding and drought all contributing to the spread. South Sudan's cholera outbreak is just one of a number of public health emergencies in Africa that is causing concern amongst global health experts. The Africa Centres for Disease Control and Prevention reported 213 disease outbreaks in 2024. That's up from 166 in 2023. Cholera was the leading killer, with 3,700 deaths in Africa last year. The WHO says the disease is a growing problem all over the world.
In fact, it's a major emergency globally. We classify the global resurgence of cholera that we have been seeing since 2021 as a grade 3 emergency in January 2023, which is our highest internal level for emergencies. And this is due to widespread outbreaks, but also, and this is a real problem, this is why it's come back, resource limitations. Countries are dealing with conflict, but they've got poor water and sanitation systems. They've got many people who are displaced, but they simply lack the means to prevent it and also to treat it.
The South Sudan government are hoping their vaccination drive will have a positive impact, but local NGOs have said the international community needs to do more to help prevent what is currently a local health emergency from spreading to other countries. Rahul Pathak, CGTN.
Germany is battling its first foot and mouth outbreak in nearly 40 years and the first in the European Union since 2011. South Korea, Mexico and the UK have already imposed import bans on German meat. Our correspondent Natalie Carney reports.
German farmer Alexander Welsch tends to his livestock day and night. His family-run farm is home to 80 cows and dozens of sheep, all of which are susceptible to foot and mouth disease.
This is, of course, a huge risk for the farmer. On the one hand, the animals themselves are replaced, but the losses resulting from this in the future are not. To imagine the situation where one day the stable is full and the next day it is empty is a horror scenario for farmers.
A single confirmed case, the first in Germany since 1988, was discovered amongst a herd of water buffalo on a farm about an hour east of Berlin in the state of Brandenburg. The rest of the herd was slaughtered. A few days later, 55 goats and sheep and 3 cattle from a nearby farm were also culled as a precautionary measure. While authorities were quick to contain the outbreak and announce that no new cases of foot and mouth disease have been discovered since, damage has been done. Germany makes more than $10 billion annually on the export of animal products. Yet after the announcement of the infection, its biggest customer, the United Kingdom, banned all imports of German livestock as well as beef, pork and lamb products, following a similar move from South Korea and Mexico. Many EU countries have also ramped up controls on German livestock as Berlin acts to reassure trade partners. However, trepidation exists, says Germany's agriculture minister, speaking at a leading international exhibition for the agriculture and horticulture industries in Berlin, where this year, usually busy stables sit empty.
I will be taking advantage of the talks with the agriculture ministers and colleagues from countries outside the European Union to argue in favour of regionalisation. That's the possibility of exporting agricultural products outside the normal export zone. But it will be difficult to promote this idea until we can say with certainty that there are no more cases of foot and mouth disease.
Farmer Welsh, who is also the head of a state farmers association, says his community is concerned about the effects of this on an industry already strained by high energy costs.
If there were to be major restrictions on trade, this would of course also have an impact on this sector. This means that at some point stocks will be full and beef can only be stored for a limited time. Accordingly, if quantities or cuts that are exported can no longer be sold, then there is a threat of price reductions.
An outbreak of foot and mouth disease in Great Britain 24 years ago cost the country close to $10 billion and led to the culling of up to 10 million animals. German experts are still working to determine just how the virus arrived in the country. Natalie Carney for CGTN, Munich.
Greenland is making headlines a lot more than usual of late, thanks to Donald Trump. The incoming US president says he wants the United States to buy the island, which is currently a territory of Denmark. Our correspondent Evangelos Ipsas reports.
Greenland has always been a land of intrigue, vast natural resources, an Arctic getaway, and a culture as rich as its icy terrain. But when Trump proposed the purchase, Greenlanders just didn't brush it off. They turned the spotlight inward, shining a light on their worth.
Greenland is not a product to be bought or sold, no matter how some foreign leaders may see us. We are a proud nation with our own culture and identity. Our future belongs to us, to shape for ourselves and for generations to come.
It's natural that Trump asks, and it's natural that the answer is Greenland is not for sale, and if it should be, the Greenlanders that make the choice.
Trump's remarks hit a nerve. It's a frustration amongst many Greenlanders. It's a feeling of being treated as a commodity rather than a nation with a voice. But these new remarks have also sparked conversations about Greenland's place in the world.
This is the first real time that someone said that, other than Danish, that Greenlanders, you're actually valuable. You are standing on valuable ground. So, of course, there's a lot of things. States are acting like a state, right? There are states, they have states' interest. But it goes the same with Denmark. Denmark has states' interest, so it's like any other state in the world. And they're not perfect. And that is the main issue here. Now there's some opportunities that are opening. And let's see if we can exploit it for the benefit of the state, future state of Greenland.
This isn't just another headline. It's a big moment for Greenland. Sure, the idea of selling their land doesn't sit well with most, but it's brought them the kind of global attention they never had before. And as the world watches and talks about their future, Greenlanders are sending a clear message. The next move for their country should be theirs to take. Evangelos Sipsas for CGTN, Nuuk, Greenland.
The Chinese mainland says it's preparing to resume group tours to Taiwan. Tourist group visits have been suspended since the pandemic, and our reporter Hunan reports now from Shanghai.
Local residents and potential tourists in Shanghai are excited about the opportunity to visit Taiwan in the near future.
I've never been to Taiwan. Now I can imagine myself in Taiwan for live concerts, enjoying local food and taking photos at locations I often see in my favorite TV shows. I will go for 4 to 5 days this time, and longer for thorough tours in the southern parts of Taiwan in the future.
For group tour, I think 1 to 2 weeks is a better choice. I want to visit more smaller cities besides Taipei for their unique culture. Also the Sun Moon Lake, which we learned from the textbook of our primary school. I'd like to see if it's the same as I've imagined.
Local travel agencies and authorities in Shanghai and Fujian province are preparing tour packages.
We're busy preparing for the Taiwan tours, including the training of tour guides, agenda design, supplier sourcing. Because the market has changed a lot these years, tourism plays an important role in Taiwan's economy. So resuming group tours is a good news for both the Taiwan tourism industry and for tourists.
Most of the residents in Fujian province share the same language and similar living habits with people living in Taiwan or even have relatives there. Therefore, we have our advantages to organize group tours to Taiwan.
As stated by the Ministry of Culture and Tourism, the resuming of group tours to Taiwan is an effort to boost cross-strait exchanges and to respond to the enthusiastic anticipation on both sides of the Taiwan Strait for peace, development, exchanges, and cooperation.
However, the outcome of the measures still depends on whether the tourism industry in Taiwan is well prepared. At the same time, we hope that the Taiwan authorities will recognize the mainstream public opinion and listen to the industry voices, lift the ban on group tours, cancel the travel warnings, and fully restore direct flights. Therefore, they can create favorable conditions for exchanges in various fields.
As the Spring Festival approaches, tourism industry insiders on both sides are eager for the implementation of the measures. Hunan, CGTN, Shanghai.
Your headlines once more. Countdown to the ceasefire. Israel's cabinet signs off the agreement with Hamas just hours before it's due to come into effect. Apprehension in Gaza as Israeli strikes continue to kill Palestinians ahead of the truce. And a health crisis in South Sudan. Officials say nearly 400 people have died from a cholera outbreak in the past month. And that's the world today. Thanks so much for watching. More news at the top of the hour. Up next, it's The Agenda with Juliet Mann. For now, from all of us here in London, goodbye.